Hello and welcome to Left Eye View's new game show, Who's to Blame? It's a brand new current affairs quiz in which we consider recent catastrophes and the contestant, in this case my alter ego, tries to identify exactly whose fault it is. So, without further ado, let me welcome today's contestant, Stuart. Hello, welcome to the show. Thanks very much. Are you planning to drink that? I was rather hoping to. How? What do you mean, how? Well, you can't exactly drink coffee through your face mask now, can you? I rather intended to take it off for the coffee. How dare you? What do you mean? You might cough. What if you give me COVID? Enjoy your coffee, Stuart. Okay. So we've had 10 years of a Tory government. First 5 in coalition with the Lib Dems, but essentially Tory since 2010. During that time we've seen many catastrophes come and go. Some haven't so much gone as we've learned to live with them. All Labour's fault. And Ramona's. I can see this is going to be an interesting game. Are you ready to play? Of course. Bring it on. Back in 2008, the American housing market collapsed as a result of subprime mortgage lending and overinvestment in futures. This caused a worldwide financial crash beginning in the States but quickly spreading across the globe. Whose fault was that? Labour's. Interesting. Gordon Brown, then Prime Minister, proposed an economic model that would have lifted us out of recession quickly after the crash. It's the model adopted by Germany and France, who of course were soon on their feet again. We went for austerity instead, following the 2010 election, with massive cuts to services and incomes under the newly formed coalition government. Whose fault was that? Labour's. See. Conservative MP Ian Duncan Smith oversaw cost and benefits in disability and was so stringent that the United Nations called it a humanitarian crisis and said the government was abusing its own population. Who was to blame for that? Well, Labour, of course. The resulting hardship is still going on even today. Over 10 years since the Conservatives came to power. Who can we blame for that? Labour and Ramona's. It might be a little early in the day to bring in the Ramona's. We haven't even got to the referendum yet. It's still their fault, but there was nothing to Ramona about. So there weren't any Ramonas at the time. They were just biding their time. There was nothing to Ramona about. They were just biding their time. Back in 2010, the National Health Service enjoyed a satisfaction rating in the high 90s. Now, after a decade of stringent cuts and underfunding, it's around 2/3 of that, even allowing for coronavirus applause. Who would you say is responsible for that? Oh, definitely Labour. Really? And Ramona's. You really don't like Ramona's, do you? No. And the Labour Party? Marxists, the lot of them. Do you know what Marxism's about? No. I thought not. Let's think about coronavirus. The World Health Organization warned us about the pandemic on December the 31st. By January the 20th, we knew what it was and how virulent it was likely to be. By January the 24th of this year, Matt Hancock chaired the first COVID virus Cobra meeting. Boris Johnson was absent. In fact, he missed the first 5 Cobra meetings. Why was that? He was busy dealing with Ramona's. On January the 30th, who declared a pandemic, and the UK had its first cases the next day. Who's to blame for that? Labour, of course. Of course. By the end of February, the World Health Organization declares the pandemic meets the criteria for the highest worldwide risk rating. By March the 11th, they've named it as a worldwide pandemic. The WHO continues to call on countries to take aggressive and decisive action, and we carry on singing happy birthday whilst we wash our hands. And thousands of NHS workers are left without adequate PPE.
Aren't you going to put your mask back on?
Nah, nobody comes up here but me.
What about me?
Finally, pubs closed on March the 20th, 2 weeks after Italy, and we entered general lockdown on March the 23rd. 5 days later, we reach 1,000 deaths, but much worse is to come. I think we know what happened next.
Bloody Ramonas.
Don't be silly, Stuart. This has nothing to do with Brexit. The virus doesn't care about nationality, although racial background does appear to be a thing.
If Ramonas hadn't delayed Brexit, we could have left the EU, closed our borders and not had to deal with the virus at all.
We wouldn't have had to join the EU procurement scheme for PPE either. Hang on. By April the 6th, Boris Johnson is apparently admitted to hospital with COVID. This is 2 weeks after he directly contravened and undermined scientific advice by shaking hands with random strangers.
That's
on a COVID ward.
That's his blitz spirit shining through.
The fact is, we were unprepared, under-resourced and with inadequate numbers of staff to deal with the crisis that Boris wanted us to just take on the chin.
Where's your stiff upper lip?
Generally hidden behind a face mask. Where's yours? The UK now has the highest COVID-related death rate in the world, and it's almost certainly getting worse now that they've started releasing lockdown. So much so, they've stopped giving us
Yeah.
Let's get to the referendum. People like Boris Johnson, Michael Gove, Nigel Farage, Jacob Rees-Mogg were very clear that there could be no downside from leaving the EU. Apparently, we held all the cards and would be able to strike a favourable deal in an afternoon over a pot of tea. Remember?
I don't remember that.
According to Nigel Farage, there was nothing to fear and everything to gain.
If you say so.
Of course, we all know now that the reality is nothing of the sort. The government's own website lists problem after problem that people should be getting prepared for, and not a single benefit except for vague opportunities that are never described.
What's your point?
Well, who's to blame for that?
Ramonas. Definitely Ramonas.
And when Boris scuppered his own oven-ready deal by downgrading human rights clauses after they'd been agreed, whose fault was that?
Oh, that was the Labour Party. Marxists, all of them. Especially that Jeremy Corbyn.
And your understanding of Marxism is?
What Nigel Farage said.
Right. The Labour Party didn't make Boris change his mind on rights. In fact, the Labour Party opposed change. They wanted to make sure British people kept their rights like fair pay, sick leave, annual leave, safe workplaces, welfare rights, and protection from unfair dismissal. Things that were in the original oven-ready deal that the EU had already agreed to.
Traitors.
So whose fault was it that the deal didn't go through?
Ramonas.
Really?
Of course.
Is there anything you wouldn't blame on either the Labour Party or the Ramonas?
No.
Why is that then?
I blame the lefties and the Ramonas.